Srila Prabhupada Lilamrta, Volume 6, Uniting Two Worlds, Around the World / Return to Vrindavan, 1975 to 1977, a biography of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, by Sattvarup Das Goswami. Chapter 7, Chant, Hare Krishna and Fight, Part 2. Allahabad, January 12th. They arrived at 9 a.m., and half a dozen of Srila Prabhupada's sannyasi disciples, along with a kirtan party of about 50 devotees, were there to greet him. They had brought Prabhupada's car down from Delhi, and he rode the short distance from the station to the Mela site. Thousands of pilgrims on foot and in rickshaws crowded the streets, making Prabhupada's progress by car slow. Finally, the road ended, but the traffic continued on to the sandy flats surrounding the Triveni, confluence of the rivers Saraswati, Ganga, and Jamuna. Here, within a few days, a city of tents had sprung up. 2 million had camped already, with millions more arriving daily. Every spiritual group in India had its bamboo-fenced compound of tents. As the car inched along, Prabhupada smiled to see a group of his disciples strolling among the camps and performing Harinam Kirtan. But not until he passed through the congested main area of camps to the far end of the Triveni did he reach the ISKCON camp. The ISKCON tents, most of which had been erected about half an hour before Srila Prabhupada's arrival, were located near a railway bridge on an island called Gangadweep, and the Triveni bathing area was a 20-minute walk away. The festival organizers had provided simple outdoor toilets, water taps, and a kitchen consisting of a cloth partition, a hole in the ground, and some bricks. It was, as Srila Prabhupada had expected, the usual Kumbh Mela austerity. But he was displeased with the camp's remote location, and when he heard that the electric lines did not reach their area, he became even more displeased. How could people come to the program in the evening if there were no lights? He called for Bhagavat and Guru Das, who were in charge of organizing the ISKCON camp. "Who got this land?" he yelled. "When I got here," said Bhagavat, "it was an empty field. They told me, 'We are putting you on this island. The governor is there. Kalapatri Maharaj is there. Maharishi Mahesh Yogi is there. I thought you were there with all the leading personalities.'" Srila Prabhupada laughed. "You are inexperienced, so they cheated you. All right, you did not know." But later, when he heard that Bhagavat and Guru Das had not obtained enough food for mass distribution, he became angry. Again, he called for Bhagavat. "Why is there no prasadam distribution tonight?" he demanded. "Well, Prabhupada," Bhagavat stuttered, "I don't know. They didn't buy any food." "Why have they not bought?" Prabhupada was angry. "What is the matter with you? You Americans are big spenders, simply wasting money. You have no stock of food. Why you did not stock rice, dal, and wheat? Why you have no stock? What is the matter with you? You have no brain. You spend 5 rupees cab fare going, 5 rupees cab fare coming back, and you buy 1 rupee of rice. This is your mentality. You are nonsense. Every time you need something, you go to the store and buy it. You don't know how to buy sufficiently one time and then use it. You cannot think like that. And why have you made this location under the elevated train? Why have you done this wrong? The train is making noise. This pandal is a failure. Food is not being distributed." After 20 minutes of reprimanding, Prabhupada dismissed Bhagavat. A little later, Prabhupada called for Bhagavat again. "Bhagavat Maharaj," he began, although Bhagavat was not a sannyasi, "if you can just get the lights on, then you will be doing good. Can you do that?" Bhagavat said he could, and by that night the ISKCON camp had lights, although, as at all the other camps, the power was frequently shut off. Only a few people visited the ISKCON pandal the first night. The weather was cold, damp, and windy. Srila Prabhupada chose to sit up all night at his desk rather than lie in the cold bed. Wearing all his clothes, sweaters, a hooded coat, a chadar, and gloves, he sat at his desk in the darkness. A kerosene heater did little to drive the chill from the tent. Rameshwar Swami sat up much of the night too, relighting the heater's pilot light, which blew out every few minutes as the wind swept through the tent. By morning, Srila Prabhupada had a bad cold with runny nose and eyes. He did not go to the river for bathing, but used the icy water from the pump next to his tent. His hands and feet were swollen, something that had happened to him before during illness. When the devotees suggested he not stay at the camp, Prabhupada insisted. He wanted to preach. People were beginning to discover his location and come to see him, so he wanted to stay and preach. Kumbh Mela, he said, was an opportunity for the devotees to preach, not merely to bathe in the Ganga. The devotees crowded into Srila Prabhupada's tent for Guru Puja and Srimad Bhagavatam class. They had no garland for him, but he said nothing about it. By the time he had ended his short lecture, the sun had risen. He asked Hari Shori to put the cot outdoors, where he rested and later took massage in the sunshine. During the massage, Prabhupada looked over at the railroad bridge and said that he remembered this bridge from his former days in Allahabad. He said that his father had been cremated under the bridge on the same island of Gangadweep in 1930. That afternoon, a group of devotees arrived from Mayapur, and some of them immediately complained to Prabhupada about how poorly managed the ISKCON Pandal seemed to be. Prabhupada asked them to try to salvage the program by distributing as many books as possible. So, the devotees began distributing Hindi editions of Prabhupada's books. The devotees took their chanting and book distribution down the main road, where they came upon the camps of different Shaivites, who sat around their fires wearing only kopans, loincloths. Many of them, their hair matted, their bodies covered with ashes, were puffing heavily on hashish and chilam pipes. Nearby, on the other side of the road, were the camps of Vaishnavas from the Ramanuja Sampradaya. Though they were also Tyagis, renunciates, and their appearance was similar to the Shaivites, they were more friendly. They were glad to see the devotees and shouted out, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama. The devotees were amazed by the piety of the millions of pilgrims. On seeing the kirtan party approach, many people offered prostrated obeisances. Others rolled on the ground or picked up dust where the devotees had walked and put it in their mouths. And although many of the pilgrims were poor, they came forward and dropped at least a few pies into the pot carried by one of the devotees. Anyone who gave a rupee would receive a book, and the books became so popular that people would come and ask for them by name. Some people threw money, and the sannyasis would catch it in their topcloths, which they would hold out like aprons. By the end of the day, the devotees had distributed about 7,000 pieces of literature. On the second night, Srila Prabhupada again sat up, while Rameshwar Swami tried futilely to keep the heater going. Hari Shori had placed Srila Prabhupada's dictating equipment on the desk, but Prabhupada did not touch it. January 14th, Srila Prabhupada's third day in Allahabad, was the first day of Kumbh Mela bathing, and would be a special opportunity for book distribution. An ISKCON chanting party of about 50 men and several Indian Gurukul boys were very well received as they traveled throughout the Mela area. At 1:30 p.m., the time of auspicious bathing, the kirtan party made its way to the Triveni. As they approached, the police cleared a path for them all the way to the water. By evening, they had distributed 8,000 books, and for the first time since they had arrived, Prabhupada expressed his pleasure at their success. He ordered some of the sannyasis to stay at the Mela until all the books were distributed. The next morning, despite ill health, Prabhupada took a walk. Surrounded by about 25 disciples, he walked slowly. Although he was a small figure surrounded by tall sannyasis, the Kumbh Mela pilgrims were able to easily recognize his preeminent position, and they would break through the ranks of devotees and offer dandavats before him. When Prabhupada saw people approaching, he would stop walking and let them touch his feet, despite the objections of his disciples. He was already sick, and he had explained in his books that a devotee can become ill if sinful people touch his feet. Still, he did not object. Srila Prabhupada was scheduled to stay at the Mela through January 21st, but his disciples pressed him to go to a place more suitable for his health. Rarely had any of them seen him so sick, and they worried. "But my only ambition," said Prabhupada, "is that so many people can become enlightened." Word was beginning to circulate that Srila Prabhupada, the guru of the Hare Krishna movement, was staying in a camp on Gangadweep, and more people were starting to come to see him. He said that the people coming to the Kumbh Mela were expecting all the holy men and spiritual teachers of India to be there, so he felt obligated to stay until the 21st. Rameshwar Swami tried to advise Prabhupada. "Srila Prabhupada," he said, "there is something much more important than your giving darshan to these people, and that is your writing of your books. Only a few thousand people are going to see you here, but if you go on writing, we will distribute your books by the millions. Then millions of people will have your darshan. There is no facility for writing here. The climate is too cold, and your health is weak. Let's go on to Bhuvanesvara, where it's warm and they have healthy water." Srila Prabhupada had previously mentioned Bhuvanesvara because of the water of Bindu Sarovara, which was supposed to have special medicinal properties. And he liked the argument that his writing was more important than his remaining in Allahabad to benefit a few thousand pilgrims. For the devotees on his personal staff, his secretary, servant, and cook, to see Prabhupada going through such austerities while suffering ill health was very painful. Finally, Prabhupada agreed to go. He called in Guru Das and Bhagavat and gave them a final verbal chastising for the mismanaged pandal. Then, on the afternoon of the 15th, he prepared to leave. Rameshwar Swami and Guru Das went to the train station to purchase tickets, but they found that no seats would be available for weeks. Seeking special consideration, they visited the local railway office, a lavishly appointed remodeled railway car. There they happened to meet their friend from Bombay, Mr. Gupta, and they told him of Prabhupada's illness and of his desire to leave at once for Calcutta. Mr. Gupta phoned Bombay and arranged for a first-class coach to be added to a train coming from Bombay to Allahabad. The devotees profusely thanked Mr. Gupta, who began proposing that Srila Prabhupada travel throughout India in a royal car like the one they were in. The devotees discussed with him about how they might buy or lease such a car, and it seemed an interesting possibility. But the immediate miracle had been arranged, a coach to take Prabhupada out of the crowded throngs of Kumbh Mela to Calcutta. After a difficult car ride, inching along through the crowds from the Triveni to the train station, Prabhupada and his party finally arrived at the railway station, where government men helped him and his disciples with their luggage and saw to their comfort. From the devotee's point of view, this was the proper respect for a pure devotee of the Lord, the most important person in the world. Yet such treatment was rare. Srila Prabhupada was pleased, and he asked his secretary to type a letter thanking Mr. Gupta, who was caring for Prabhupada, just like a father looking after a son. He invited Mr. Gupta and his family to attend the upcoming Gaur Purnima festival in Mayapur. During the train ride to Calcutta, Srila Prabhupada reiterated his displeasure with the mismanaged ISKCON Pandal at Kumbh Mela. Thousands of guests were coming to the Hare Krishna Pandal without receiving prasadam. Determined that the bad example not be repeated, he dictated a letter to all ISKCON temple presidents. Quote, "Please accept my blessings. Now you must arrange in each temple. There must be sufficient stock of prasadam for distribution. You can keep first-class cooks, 2 or 3, and they should be always engaged. Whenever any guest comes, he must get prasad. This arrangement must be made, that the cooks prepare 10, 20 servings at a time of puris and sabji, and then you can add halwa and pakoras and the visitors may be supplied immediately. Whenever a gentleman comes, he must be served. As the 20 servings are being distributed, immediately the cooks prepare another 20 servings and store it. At the end of the day, if no one comes, our own men will take, so there is no loss. You cannot say it is finished, it is not cooked yet. There is no supply for cooking, etc. This must be enforced rigidly. The temple is managed by Srimati Radharani, Lakshmiji, so why should there be want? Our philosophy is, if anyone comes, let him take prasad, chant Hare Krishna, and be happy. Everything is being supplied by Krishna. Krishna is not poor, so why should we deny them? This should be done at any cost. There is no difficulty. It simply requires nice management. At the end of the day, you may sell or give away. If we believe that Krishna is providing for and maintaining everyone, then why should we be misers? This means losing faith in Krishna and thinking that we are the doers and suppliers. We are confident Krishna will supply. Let the whole world come, we can feed them. So please, do this nicely. Begin at once." Unquote. Srila Prabhupada asked to hear the reviews of his books as published in The Krishna Consciousness Movement is Authorized. His secretary read one review after another, professors praising Prabhupada's work and requesting him to go on producing such valuable books. After hearing the reviews, Prabhupada lay down to rest. "The pen is mightier than the sword," Rameshwar Swami declared. "Yes," Srila Prabhupada answered. "It is a revolution. That is what I thought as I wrote on and on. The communists have changed the lives of people throughout the world by their empty literature and false promises. Why not a revolution started on the basis of the absolute knowledge?" January 18th, 1977. After the intense cold of Kumbh Mela, Prabhupada had recuperated a couple of days in Calcutta. His head cold had gone away, but the swelling in his hands and feet persisted, as did other maladies. Externally, he was diabetic and suffered from poor digestion, as well as from the general dwindling of physical powers common to an 81-year-old body. His condition was not suited for continual travel, hard work, frequent lectures, and taxing management. Yet, Prabhupada was transcendental to his apparent material condition. Although sometimes he would inquire about cures, mostly he was callous towards his poor health. Even after receiving a doctor's advice or concluding himself what was good for his health, he would often ignore it in favor of what he thought was best for spreading Krishna consciousness. Previously in Vrindavan, he had felt better by drinking the fresh well water. So, he thought he might also get relief by drinking the water of the famous Bindu Sarovara near Bhuvanesvara. Besides, ISKCON had recently acquired a small donated plot of land outside the city, and Srila Prabhupada's Orion disciple, Gaur Govinda Swami, had gone there, constructed 2 simple dwellings, and was making plans to build a temple. The train journey from Calcutta to Bhuvanesvara was 12 hours, another opportunity for Rameshwar Swami to probe. His 30-day assignment as Prabhupada's secretary was almost over, and then he would return to Los Angeles and his American BBT duties. He had come to India set on inquiring from Prabhupada about whether there would be world war, and if so, how book distribution would continue, and how, in the future, a new world order of Krishna consciousness would be introduced. Prabhupada had answered many of his questions, but there were always more. The Puri Express left Calcutta around 10 p.m. After taking a massage, Srila Prabhupada stretched out on the lower bunk to rest, and Harishori and Rameshwar took the 2 bunks opposite him. Around midnight, Prabhupada turned on his light, sat up, and began chanting softly on his beads. Within a few minutes, Rameshwar awoke, and seeing his spiritual master sitting up, paid obeisances and also sat up, waiting expectantly. Immediately, Prabhupada began to speak about the inevitability of war between Russia and America. Even if America took to Krishna consciousness, the war would be inevitable. The only way to stop the godlessness of communism. When Rameshwar asked if that war would be within his lifetime, Prabhupada said it was difficult to say. It depended, he said, on the devotees' distribution of books and Back to Godhead magazines. Although in Russia the government tried to strictly control all literature, Krishna-conscious books were entering nonetheless, and were immediately becoming popular. The communist leaders were becoming fearful, but they also had some respect for Indian culture. Prabhupada said that by increasing book distribution, America, and thereafter the whole world, would become Krishna-conscious. So you have to push on more and more, he said. This opposition, brainwashing charges, means they are recognizing this as a culture. They may like it or not, but they recognize it as something permanent. Prabhupada said he had no political aim, but he knew that Indian culture coupled with American money could save the world. You must think in terms of the whole world, he said, not just one nation. That is our preaching. That is the duty of the GBC. The talk went on for more than 2 hours, and Rameshwar felt completely satisfied by the intimate instructions. Although he had once before asked some of the same questions about book distribution and the war, Prabhupada had chosen not to answer, but now he revealed some of his thoughts, just as a father instructing a trustworthy son. Conditions on the ISKCON land in Bhuvanesvara were primitive. 2 small, mud-walled huts with thatched roof. Srila Prabhupada occupied one 8x12 room in one of the cottages, and his servant and secretary stayed just on the other side of the wall. Electricity had been installed on the land a few days before, so Hare had placed an electric lamp and the dictating machine on Prabhupada's desk. The second small building, about 25 feet from Prabhupada's hut, was a tiny temporary temple room. A shabby canvas roof spanned the open area between the 2 buildings, and Prabhupada's Vyasasan was beneath this, arranged so he could lecture at outdoor gatherings. 2 rented tents also stood on the land to accommodate visiting devotees during Prabhupada's stay. Prabhupada's outdoor toilet facilities, about 25 feet behind his hut, consisted of a latrine and a separate area for bathing. Srila Prabhupada did not mind the primitive facilities. In fact, he liked them. Although he was ill and for personal comfort could have been residing in his choice of comfortable buildings in the West, a manor in London, a castle in Paris, a penthouse apartment in New York City, he felt perfectly at home and happy, living in a primitive mud and thatched hut on a secluded patch of land in the dust of Orissa. Sitting on the outdoor Vyasasan, Prabhupada spoke to a small gathering of devotees and some local villagers. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he said, had 2 favorite places, Bengal and Orissa. And in Orissa, Jagannatha Puri, he spent the last 18 years of his life. He went to Vrindavan and South India, but then returned here to stay with his personal associates, Sri Ramananda Rai, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and Shikhi Mahiti. Prabhupada quoted a scriptural reference indicating that the spiritual movement for this age will begin from Utkala, or Orissa. Srila Prabhupada said Orissa was very special to the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, and his own Guru Maharaj was also born here at Puri. Now we have got a little place here, he said. It doesn't matter if it takes time, but slowly, but surely, we can develop this center, especially since Bhuvanesvara is going to be the capital of Orissa. In the future, many tourists will come to see other attractions of Orissa. Now it is up to the Oriens to develop this idea. Prabhupada spoke with Gaur Govinda Swami and told him to begin advertising. Private meetings in the afternoon and a regular lecture Kirtan Prasadam program at night. That evening, very few visitors came. ISKCON had done little preaching in Orissa, and Prabhupada was not as well known. Mostly local farmers, villagers, and poor children came for the free prasadam. Prabhupada told the audience that he could speak in 3 languages, English, Bengali, and Hindi, but not in Oriya. He therefore decided to speak in English and have Gaur Govinda translate. He would speak a few sentences and then pause while Gaur Govinda gave the Oriya. In this material world, said Prabhupada during his evening lecture, always the attempt is to defy the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. At the present moment, the so-called scientists' only business is how to defy the supremacy of God. Naturally, this movement has to face many impediments, because at the present moment the whole world is practically godless. Even in our country, in India, where Bhagavad Gita was spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, even here the same attempt is going on. Big scholars, big politicians, they take Bhagavad Gita in their hand to show that they are great authorities in Bhagavad Gita, but they are presenting commentation just to defy Krishna. Prabhupada spoke for about 10 minutes. There were no questions. Bhuvanesvara's hot days and cool nights just suited Prabhupada. After resting for a few hours, he rose and began translating Srimad Bhagavatam. It was the first time he had done so since leaving Bombay for Kumbh Mela. He was nearing the end of the 9th canto. Gaur Govinda Maharaj had scheduled a cornerstone laying ceremony for a new temple on February 2nd, the appearance day of Lord Nityananda. Prabhupada agreed to stay until then and leave the next morning. Srila Prabhupada's failing health prevented him from eating fried foods. His expert cooks in Bhuvanesvara, Palika Devi Dasi and Sruti Devi Dasi, carefully prepared meals that were nutritious and tasty but without ghee. Sometimes, however, he specifically requested certain fried foods, but would later complain that they didn't agree with him. Rameshwar Swami, Gargamuni Swami, and Bhavananda Goswami were sitting with Srila Prabhupada in his hut, discussing deprogramming cases with him. They were saying that these enemies of ISKCON were so fanatical that for Srila Prabhupada to go to America would be dangerous. Srila Prabhupada interrupted, however, changing the subject. Our immediate problem, he said, is toward my health. I am not digesting food. Therefore, there is some swelling in the hands and the legs. Is it affecting your translation work? Asked Rameshwar Swami. That it has not affected, said Prabhupada. It is going on. I have translated 17 volumes. That may not be affected. He reached over and turned on the dictating machine, and they heard a few seconds of his most recent dictation from the 24th chapter of the 9th canto. We know you have a very low opinion of doctors, said Rameshwar Swami. I wish to die without a doctor, Prabhupada said. I may be seriously ill, but don't call a doctor. Chant Hare Krishna. Don't be disturbed. Everyone has to die. Let us die peacefully without doctor. All this medicine, injections, and prohibitions, this, that. Chant Hare Krishna and depend on Krishna. Nartasya chagadam udanvati. That is Prahlad Maharaj's verse. Find out this 7th canto. Hari Shorty reached to Prabhupada's bookcase for the 7th canto, volume 2 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Within a few moments he found the verse and read aloud, quote, My Lord Nrsimhadev, O Supreme, because of a bodily conception of life, embodied souls neglected and not cared for by you cannot do anything for their betterment. Whatever remedies they accept, although perhaps temporarily beneficial, are certainly impermanent. For example, a father and mother cannot protect their child, a physician and medicine cannot relieve a suffering patient, and a boat on the ocean cannot protect a drowning man." Unquote. "These are facts," said Prabhupada. "That's ultimately," said Gargamuni Swami, "but maybe we could give you some temporary relief, because when you are ill, we feel—" "Yes," Prabhupada conceded, "but no severe treatment should be accepted. Better not to take. Better to chant Hare Krishna." "Srila Prabhupada," said Bhavananda, "in the past, when your health was not good, they have begun chanting Hare Krishna in all temples around the world, a special additional kirtan. Perhaps we could institute that." "No," said Prabhupada, "not for my health. You do your kirtan ordinary." "That first stroke on 2nd Avenue, that was almost fatal. You were present, I think." Prabhupada turned to Gargamuni, and they reminisced about the stroke in 1967. Hari Shori said a homeopathic doctor had just prescribed some special medicine, and Prabhupada agreed to try it. Gargamuni said that his father used to have a similar swelling, but his had been due to diabetes. "I have diabetes," said Prabhupada. Gargamuni Swami said his father used to give himself an insulin injection every morning. "There are many gentlemen who take insulin at least once a day," said Prabhupada, although he obviously had no intentions of doing so. Prabhupada's main health program was his diet, but even in that, he was not very strict. An Indian cook named Shanti Lal was present in Bhuvanesvara, and he used a lot of spices and ghee in cooking for Gargamuni Swami and his men. Sometimes Prabhupada would ask for some of what Shanti Lal had cooked, and this greatly disturbed Prabhupada's servants and cooks, although they could do nothing about it. Gargamuni had also been ill recently, and when Prabhupada first saw him with his cook Shanti Lal, he had said, "I thought you were sick." "Yes," Gargamuni had replied, "but still I have to eat." "Srila Prabhupada, you are eating very simply. You are not eating spiced food?" "Sometimes I also have to have spices," Prabhupada replied. "Otherwise there is no taste, and without that taste, what is the use of life?" Then, in a joking spirit, Prabhupada and Gargamuni Swami commiserated, saying that they were not going to stop eating tasty prasadam. "We'd rather die," laughed Gargamuni Swami, and Prabhupada also laughed. On his last day, as Srila Prabhupada's secretary in India, Rameshwar Swami entered Prabhupada's hut and inquired again about war in the future. "You have mentioned several times," he began, "that there is a conflict which is inevitable between Russia and America." "No," said Prabhupada. "If they understand Krishna consciousness, both of them, then there will be no conflict. Now we are publishing in Russian." When Rameshwar asked what would happen if many cities were bombed, Prabhupada said that people would come to their senses and adopt a simpler agrarian life, just as the ISKCON farm communities were demonstrating. "That will be a good lesson for them," said Prabhupada. "So, is this conflict part of the spreading of Krishna consciousness?" "Oh, yes." "Paritranaya sadhunang vinashaya cha dushkritam." Footnote: Lord Krishna's mission is not only to protect his devotees, but also to curb the miscreants. To conflict means to finish their sinful activities. Finished. Stop it. So, after the conflict, there will be an opportunity to influence people? "We shall take every opportunity," said Prabhupada. "We are the best opportunists. Anukulyena Krishna. This is Anukula, favorable for spreading Krishna consciousness, and we shall immediately accept it. It does not matter what it is. We do not depend on the public opinion, that this is good or this is bad. Good means if it is favorable for spreading Krishna consciousness." Rameshwar said that it seemed the Krishna consciousness movement would have to grow much more before it could actually be as influential as Prabhupada was indicating. It will grow, said Prabhupada. It is growing. Simply our workers should be very sincere and strict, and it will grow. Nobody can object. That's a fact. Simply we have to be very strict and sincere, and nobody can check. We will be the only ones who have any vision of what to do after the war, said Rameshwar. Yes, said Prabhupada. We have got a clear vision. We are not putting any theory. We are always presenting fact, and that is materializing. Just like we started our farm communities, it is materializing gradually. It is not yet fully organized. Still, there is hope that it will give peace to the people. There is sufficient hope. After a few days, more of the people of Bhuvanesvara began to visit Srila Prabhupada. One evening, he was in his room speaking with several men when one of them asked, "Well, Swamiji, actually, what is God?" Srila Prabhupada opened his eyes widely in disbelief. "What is this?" he said. "You are from India and you do not know what is God? This is the degradation of Kali Yuga." Srila Prabhupada continued his sharp criticism and then explained that Indians have the special benefit of Vedic literature and culture. Therefore, every Indian should know God. Prabhupada gave his first public lecture the next evening, and about 150 people attended. He began his lecture. "Last night, some gentleman questioned what is God." Srila Prabhupada explained that Sri Bhagavan personally appears in our country, Bharatvarsha, and leaves his instructions, which have been accepted by the acharyas. India, Prabhupada explained, is especially favored, since God personally incarnates there and imparts his instructions. But at the present moment, Prabhupada continued, our young men are inquiring what is God. So why has this happened? It has happened because we are making progress toward animal civilization. Anyone with a bodily conception of self, Prabhupada said, anyone thinking of his identity in relation to family, country, or race was no better than a cow or an ass, according to Vedic Shastra. He repeatedly warned that Indians should be careful of sinking to the position of having to ask, what is God? Unfortunately, when he called for questions after his lecture, it was the same thing. I want to know the meaning of the word Krishna, a man asked. You do not know what is the meaning of Krishna? Prabhupada retorted. You do not know. The man said something in Oriya and then said in English, the etymological meaning. Krishna, said Prabhupada, means all attractive. Krish, Karshati, yes, Krishna means the attractive, all attractive. And besides that, you do not know Krishna? That is the difficulty, that our people have become so degraded that they are asking, what is God, what is Krishna? Someone has studied the 7th canto of Ramayana, but now he is asking, whose father is Sita? So this is the position. We are born in the country where Krishna spoke everything, and now we are asking, what is the meaning of Krishna? What is God? This is the position, very degraded position. While Prabhupada rode in his car to the park for his morning walk, he saw billboards and banners announcing that Sanjay Gandhi was coming to town. Sanjay Gandhi's particular political platform was that everyone should become literate. Looking out the window at the poor, barren land, Prabhupada said, what is the benefit of literacy when the people are poor and starving? He said that the local people were coming to the ISKCON evening program just to get a little khichdi, not because it was prasadam, but because they were hungry. So, if after many years of education they learned to read but still earned little money and had the same employment, then what was the benefit? Life was not for such education. Prabhupada lamented that so much land was lying uncultivated. Seeing several men jogging, Prabhupada commented that most people were hungry and poor, while a few were living in big houses, overeating and running to lose fat. So he will educate the people, Srila Prabhupada said, and after some time they will join the Naxalite movement and kill the rich man. No, everyone should be engaged in working the land. Prabhupada said his ISKCON men should also work, because unless they were properly engaged, they would gossip and fall victim to sex desire. Since arriving in Bhuvanesvara, Srila Prabhupada had several times talked about going to Jagannath Puri, about an hour away. Since he had hopes of one day building a big center in Puri, he wanted to see some plots of land for sale. He hadn't been to Puri, he said, since 1958. Since his Western disciples were not allowed to enter the Jagannath temple, Prabhupada said he would not enter either, but he would go to Puri to see what land was available. Early one morning, Prabhupada set out in his car for Puri, on the Bay of Bengal. He looked at several properties there, but either their locations were poor or the buildings were deteriorated, or both. Prabhupada walked along the beach with his men, and the surf was pounding. I was jumping here, he laughed. In 1920 or 21, I came here. At that time, I was married. I was married in 1918. I came after appearing for my BA examination. And because I was jubilant, I was jumping. When the waves came, I was jumping. Now, it is 57 years after. They say we do not change bodies, but where is that body? Now I am walking with stick. Then I was jumping. I am still here, I remember, but the body has changed. What is the difficulty to understand? I am the same. Otherwise, how am I remembering all these things? But that body is now lost. Tata dehantara prapti. Why this simple philosophy these rascals cannot understand. Srila Prabhupada stayed a day at the beachside tourist bungalow, and one of his godbrothers, Shyamasundar Brahmachari, from the local Purushottama Gaudiya Math, visited. After he left, Sri Seva Siva Rat, a member of the Pujari committee of the Jagannath temple, also came to visit. Prabhupada spoke to him about the possibility of ISKCON devotees entering the Jagannath temple. To bar the Western Vaishnavas from entering the temple was prejudiced and ignorant. Since the members of the Krishna consciousness movement were fully engaged in spiritual life, they should not be considered unfit simply because of their birth status or race. Seva Siva Rath was friendly and agreed with Srila Prabhupada. He promised he would do what he could to help. He also told Prabhupada about a book he had just published and invited him to attend a small Pandal meeting the next evening, at which the book would be inaugurated. Prabhupada agreed. Later, Prabhupada was sitting on the veranda outside his room at the tourist bungalow. As he sat watching Shantilal preparing lunch in the back of Gargamuni's van, he could smell the aromatic spices cooking in the ghee. He called to Gargamuni Swami and asked that a plate of Shantilal's cooking be brought to him. Soon Prabhupada was enjoying a meal of rice, dal, puris, spicy sabjis, and chutney. He said that Shantilal cooked wonderfully and that all devotees in ISKCON should learn this art. If the meat eaters could take such prasadam, he said, they would give up their sinful habit. As Prabhupada sat in his hotel room that evening with a few disciples at his feet, he reminisced about how he had come to America in 1965 and had suffered 2 heart attacks at sea. They say that anyone who gets a 3rd heart attack, said Prabhupada, they must expire. I had 2 attacks on the ship, and then in New York a 3rd one, paralyzed. Left side was paralyzed. I do not know how I was saved. And one girl, that captain's wife, she studied astrology. She said, Swami, if you can survive your 70th year, then you will live for 100 years. Srila Prabhupada and his disciples laughed. So, Prabhupada continued, somehow or other I have survived my 70th year. I do not know whether... They say I will live for 100 years, but 70th year was severe. 3 heart attacks and paralysis, and I was without any family. At that time, none of you were with me. I was alone. I wasn't dependent on anyone, but on the ship I saw that Krishna was going to save me. I was going for his mission. Devotees were regularly bringing up the topics of brainwashing and deprogramming. That evening, one of the devotees mentioned that sometimes the opposition was taking the testimony of an ex-disciple of Prabhupada's who would speak against the movement. Because he is a rascal, Prabhupada explained, therefore he is excommunicated. My Guru Maharaj kicked him out. So what is the value of his testimony? That it's natural that someone will go out and speak against us. These things will happen in preaching. You cannot expect a very smooth path. The devotees agreed, and someone added that one of Jesus' closest disciples had betrayed him. Srila Prabhupada compared the present trouble to the troubles he had encountered when he first came to America. He reminisced further about his near-fatal illness in 1967 and his return to India, where he had recuperated. But even after returning to America, he commented he had not been able to sleep at night because of a sound in his ear. As long as the body will be there, Prabhupada said, there will be so many troubles. Krishna has advised that they will come and go. Don't care for it. Aga ma pa yano nityastangs titikchava bharata. So bodily troubles, mental troubles, and enemies, so many impediments will come. What can be done? We have to tolerate. That is the material world. We cannot expect smooth, very happy. That is not possible. Krishna was advising that to Arjuna. What to speak of us? Krishna never says, I have made some magic. You will have nothing to suffer. He never gave Arjuna any tablet. So we have to follow that. The modern gurus say, I will give you some magic ash. There will be no trouble. But Krishna, what did he say? He said, no, tolerate. He did not say, you are ass. I will give you some ash. Neither did Arjuna ask, why do you ask me to fight? Give me some ash. I'll throw it. He was not such a fool that he asked some magic from Krishna to kill his enemies. Actually, he fought. This is Bhagavad Gita. So face things as they are and depend on Krishna. That is our duty. Don't expect any ash, miracle, magic. The next morning, from the porch, Srila Prabhupada was watching the devotees swimming in the Bay of Bengal. Calling Hare over, he said he would like to bathe in the ocean and asked him what he thought about it. Hare and the other devotees present all thought it was a good idea. Seawater was supposed to be good for health, they said. Prabhupada said he would try it, and after taking his morning massage, walked down to the seashore wearing his gangsha and carrying a towel. The ocean shore was about 100 yards from the hotel, and by the time Prabhupada reached the water, all the devotees were running after him in their gangshas. Some of the devotees were already in the ocean, and when Prabhupada reached the water's edge, they all gathered around him. As the waves glided in and swirled around Prabhupada's feet, Hare scooped palmfuls of water and began to bathe Prabhupada's body, his arms, chest, and head, washing away the mustard seed oil he had applied during the massage. Soon other devotees began reverently splashing handfuls of water onto Prabhupada's body. Standing almost up to his knees in water, the bright sunshine illuminating his golden-hued body, Prabhupada laughed as the devotees joined in. The devotees realized that this pastime was just like an abhishek, or bathing of a deity, and when Guru Kripa Swami began to sing the prayers for bathing the deity, Chintamani Prakara Sadmasu, the other devotees joined in, singing and taking part in the abhishek by the sea. Srila Prabhupada enjoyed it, sometimes putting his head forward to indicate that he wanted water poured on his head, then closing his eyes as the devotees poured the water. When Prabhupada lost his balance for a moment, Hare grabbed him. Prabhupada's feet had been sinking into the sand, and when he held one foot out, it was muddy. As he wriggled his toes, A devotee poured water on the foot, washing it clean. Prabhupada then bent over, put ocean water in his mouth, and spat it out. Only Guru Kripa Swami was quick enough to catch some of the water and drink it. As Prabhupada allowed the devotees to participate in bathing and massaging him, the devotees were carried away by ecstatic feelings. After about 10 minutes, Prabhupada came out of the water, changed his clothes, and walked back to the hotel, where 2 devotees escorted him to a comfortable chair, sat him down, and carried him up to his room for an afternoon rest. In the afternoon, Sevasiva Rath came again to see Prabhupada, accompanied this time by another Puri Brahmin. They gave Prabhupada some Jagannath prasadam and sang the Jagannath Ashtakam. In silent appreciation, Prabhupada listened as the Brahmins sang the famous prayers, with each verse ending, Jagannath Swami Nayana Patagami Bhavatu Me. O Lord of the universe, kindly be visible unto me. When the 2 Brahmins finished singing, Prabhupada said, So, these European and American Vaishnavas, they are hankering after Jagannatha Swami Nayana Patagami Bhavatu Me. Now it is through your intervention that they may be able to see Jagannatha Swami. They are hankering like that. Jagannatha Swami Nayana Patagami. Sevasiva Rath again expressed his sympathy about the devotees not entering Jagannath's temple. He also told Prabhupada more about the book he had published, a compilation of select verses from Jagannath Das's translation of the Srimad Bhagavatam into Oriya. Sevasiva had also written some commentary, and his book was to be inaugurated at a function that evening. Prabhupada again promised to attend and address Puri's Brahmins and religionists. That evening, Srila Prabhupada was guest of honor at the outdoor pandal on the beach, and his disciples accompanied him to the stage with a rousing kirtan. Prabhupada took his seat. After the kirtan ended, one of the managers of the Jagannath temple came forward and garlanded Srila Prabhupada. Sevasiva then announced, We thank A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who has been kind enough to grace this occasion wherein we have assembled this evening to pay our respectful homage to His Holiness Jagannath Das Goswami, who was a contemporary of Lord Chaitanya. Suddenly, about 5 Brahmins sitting on a platform rose and walked off the stage to join a kirtan party in front of an altar in a nearby field. It seemed strange to the devotees that these men had to leave just when Srila Prabhupada was going to speak. I thank you very much, Srila Prabhupada began, but then the sound system failed. Srila Prabhupada paused, while one of his own disciples, an electrician, corrected the problem. Srila Prabhupada resumed speaking, his voice amplified above the distraction of the nearby kirtans. So, in our humble way, Prabhupada was saying, we are trying to introduce Jagannatha Swami's culture. Jagannatha Swami Nayana Patagami Bhavatu Me. Sevasiva had invited Prabhupada explicitly to speak about his new book, and Prabhupada had already mentioned privately to his disciples that these people were inviting him to serve their own purpose. But now Prabhupada took the occasion to speak about Lord Jagannath rather than about the Oriyan Jagannath Das. He had a special message in mind. You will be very much pleased to know, he continued, that in the year 1967, I introduced Ratha Yatra in San Francisco, and it has been going on continually for the last 9 or 10 years. And the government, they have fixed up a holiday for Ratha Yatra. We have the 20th of July as a government-fixed holiday for Ratha Yatra, and people take part in the Ratha Yatra. Not only my devotees, but even outsiders. 10 to 12,000 people attend, and we distribute prasadam to all of them. They feel very much obliged. And the newspaper writes that people in general never felt such ecstasy as they are feeling in the Ratha Yatra festival. The police say that the crowds in the Western countries, as soon as there is a big crowd, they create disturbance. But the police were surprised that this crowd is not a window-breaking crowd. Next, we introduced Ratha Yatra in London, and in London, Trafalgar Square. It is the most famous square within the city. There is a big column called Nelson's Common. Our Ratha was so high that the Guardian newspaper criticized this Ratha Yatra as a rival to Nelson's column. Next, we introduced Ratha Yatra in Philadelphia, and last year we introduced Ratha Yatra in New York. And we also have Ratha Yatra in Melbourne and Sydney and in Paris. So, in the Western countries, Ratha Yatra is being introduced one after another, and Jagannatha Swami is attracting the attention of the Western people. Suddenly, some of the men on the stage began talking loudly among themselves in Oriya. Prabhupada stopped, turned, and said, "What is that?" The talking subsided, and he continued, "So, people will come in your Jagannath Puri now from all parts of the world. That is beneficial from various points of view. From the point of view of the tourist program, the government will benefit. When people are attracted to see Jagannath Puri, Jagannatha Swami, that is good. But unfortunately, you do not allow these foreigners to enter the temple. How can it be adjusted? This stumbling block should be dissolved, that you want Jagannatha Swami to be compact within your home, and you do not expand the mercy of Jagannath. He is Jagannath, Lord of the universe. He is not only just Purinath or Oriyanath, he is Jagannath. Krishna declares in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhoktarang Yagya Tapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. That is the definition of Jagannatha Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. Krishna is the proprietor and controller of everything. So, why you should deny the inhabitants of Sarvaloka the darshan of Jagannath? Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu never approved such things. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Pritivite ache yata nagaradi gram sarvatra prachara haibe moranam. When the thing is being done and when they are eager to come here, why should you restrain? What is the cause? This is not very good. Srila Prabhupada continued to argue that foreigners who had taken to Vaishnavism should be allowed to enter the temple of Lord Jagannath. Offenses to the Vaishnavas, he said, were condemned by Lord Chaitanya. Therefore, Prabhupada declared he had come to Puri specifically to request the leaders to remove this offensive restriction and be friendly to the foreign devotees. He invited Puri's leaders to come and see the Jagannath and Radha Krishna temples all over the world and see how the foreigners had actually become pure Vaishnavas, strictly avoiding sinful life. No illicit sex, no meat eating, no fish eating, no egg eating, no intoxication, no gambling, said Prabhupada. Why you should not receive them as Vaishnava and give them proper reception? That is my request. I hope there are many learned scholars and devotees present here. They should endeavor to remove this restriction of short-sightedness and let us combinedly work with Jagannath to preach the bhakti cult for the benefit of the whole world. As Prabhupada finished his lecture, Hari Shorty leaned forward and asked Prabhupada if he wanted to answer questions. But Sevasiva came quickly to Prabhupada's side and said, "No, don't put their questions." Sevasiva picked up the small paperback volume, which was supposed to have been the topic of the evening's presentation. "The Bhagavat of Jagannath," said Sevasiva, and he handed it to Srila Prabhupada, requesting him to now speak, as expected, about the merit of the book and its inauguration. Srila Prabhupada looked indifferently at the small book in his hand. Speaking over the microphone, he said, "So what shall I do? Of course, I do not know the Oriya language, but it is said that it is Bhagavat of Jagannath. So it is inaugurated today." Prabhupada placed the book down and stood up to leave. The audience applauded. Srila Prabhupada then walked off across the sands in the dark, followed by his disciples, and entered a nearby Gaudiya Math temple, where the devotees held kirtan. Then they went to another Gaudiya Math temple, Purushottama Math, and again held kirtan. During the chanting at Purushottama Math, Prabhupada sat in a chair. When he was ready to leave, he began to stand, using his cane as a support, but suddenly, as he was about halfway up, he dropped down again onto the chair. Hari Shorty had to lift him to his feet by holding him under the arms. Prabhupada said nothing, but walked slowly out of the hall and got into the car. Not everyone had noticed Prabhupada's momentary collapse, but Hari Shorty, on returning to his room, anxiously wrote of it in a letter to a godbrother as yet another sign that Srila Prabhupada's health is very quickly dwindling away. Certainly none of the Puri Pandits had noticed any dwindling from Srila Prabhupada's presentation on behalf of Lord Jagannath, Lord of the universe.